Dog senses something strange during routine stop, and officer freezes when he sees the girl in the back seat. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always awesome to see how far our stories are reaching. In Patrol Car 716 of the local police, Officer James Carter, a man with a tough face and tired eyes, drove with his headlights dimmed, joined by his trusted partner, Officer Sarah Bennett, and their inseparable companion Rex, a German shepherd trained to detect drugs, find missing people and, according to James, spot human lies. The radio was quiet, and the air inside the car felt heavy but familiar. James, with 15 years on the force, trusted Rex more than most of his colleagues. The dog lying between the front seats kept his ears perked, as if he already sensed something out of place. Suddenly, a dark sedan sped through a stop sign without slowing down. It was a split second, but enough for James to flip on the flashing lights and turn the wheel with precision. The car pulled over to the side of the road under the faint glow of a rusty street lamp. "See that? Didn't even glance at the sign," Sarah said, grabbing her flashlight. "Let's hear his story," James muttered, opening the door as Rex lifted his head, alert. The driver lowered his window slowly. He was a middle-aged man, well-dressed, with a smile as bright as it was fake. His movements were careful, like he'd rehearsed every gesture in front of a mirror. "Good evening, officer," he greeted with a calm voice. "Did I do something wrong?" James narrowed his eyes. There was something about this guy, something in the perfection of his behavior that gave him chills. It wasn't just the lack of nerves, it was too controlled. But when Sarah's flashlight beam hit the back seat, James's heart skipped a beat. A girl. She couldn't have been older than 8. Blonde, with her hair tied in 2 braids, she clutched an old doll to her chest. Her face was blank. She didn't say a word. She didn't cry. She just stared down, still, as if she wished she could disappear. Rex let out a low growl. "Is that your daughter?" Sarah asked, jotting down the license plate. "Yes, of course, we're heading home. It's been a long day," the man replied, still smiling. But the girl didn't nod. She didn't turn her head. She showed no sign of recognizing the man. Rex stood up in the car and pressed his nose against the window, restless. James felt a knot in his stomach. Something was off. This girl wasn't calm. She was terrified, and that fear wasn't new. "Can I have your name, sir?" James asked, keeping his eyes on the back seat. "Michael Harris," the man answered, showing a spotless driver's license. But then, in a fleeting moment, while Sarah took notes and Rex scratched at the window insistently, James saw the girl's lips move, almost imperceptibly. 3 words, no sound, but clear. "Help me." Time stopped. Sarah's flashlight shook slightly. Rex growled again, louder. James closed his notebook. He looked Michael Harris in the eyes and forced a calm smile. "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Harris. You're free to go." The car pulled away slowly, vanishing into the dark road. But as the taillights faded, James turned on the patrol car's camera, rewound the footage, and looked again. There it was, clear as day. The girl had asked for help, and that night, James swore he wouldn't sleep until he found her. Rain started to fall softly on the patrol car's windshield as James, in complete silence, fast-forwarded and rewound the dashboard camera footage. Sarah, sitting beside him, stared at the screen with a furrowed brow. Rex, restless, paced in circles on the back seat, sniffing the air as if he could still sense the girl's presence. "There it is," James whispered, pausing the video at the exact moment the girl's lips formed those 2 chilling words. "Sarah." She asked for help, no question about it. Sarah swallowed hard. She'd seen it too, but had hoped she was wrong. Maybe out of fear of making a mistake. Maybe because of the horror of what it meant. "Do you think he kidnapped her?" she asked, her voice tight. James didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned slowly to Rex and gave him a signal. The German shepherd leaned toward the screen, sniffing the air, letting out a faint growl. Rex doesn't trust him, neither do I. He grabbed his phone, dialed the missing children's unit, and requested urgent access to the database of missing kids. Meanwhile, Sarah checked the car's plates in the police system. Michael Harris's name came up clean. Too clean. "This is weird," Sarah muttered. "Nothing in his record. No tickets, no complaints, not even a permanent address. Just a P.O. box in Oak Grove." James narrowed his eyes. Oak Grove was a tiny town, barely big enough for a gas station. What was a guy with a fancy car and a silent girl doing coming from there? Suddenly, an alert flashed on the screen, lighting up the car's interior. Missing child reported in the last 72 hours. The face of Emily Thompson appeared in the digital file. 8 years old, blonde hair, last seen leaving school in Maplewood. She matched the girl they'd just seen, perfectly. James and Sarah exchanged urgent looks. "We need to track that guy. Now," James said, starting the patrol car. Rex barked loudly, as if he knew it was his cue. The patrol car sped down the wet road as the rain grew heavier and the city lights faded behind them. James didn't know how much time they had, but every minute mattered. That girl had asked for help, and he wasn't going to ignore her. Rex stood by the window, sniffing the outside air, his muscles tense like a soldier in battle. He too felt time slipping away. Meanwhile, James sent the footage to headquarters, requesting a nationwide alert. This wasn't a routine patrol anymore. It was a nightmare, one that hadn't yet shown its worst face, and somewhere down the road, Michael Harris knew they were coming for him. The patrol car's lights cut through the muddy road as James pressed the gas pedal firmly. Time seemed to dissolve in the wet night. Every second lost was a step further from the girl. Sarah worked the national license plate tracker, trying to pinpoint the last place Michael Harris's car had been spotted. Rex, with his nose pressed to the glass, let out a low whine, as if the scent was still fresh in his canine memory. "We've got a recent hit on Highway 17 near the turnoff to Riverbend," Sarah reported as the digital map glowed red. "Leads to cheap motels, back roads, places where nobody asks questions," James said darkly. The silence in the car grew heavy. The rain now fell harder, pounding the hood like the sky was trying to warn them. James thought of his own daughter, lost years ago in an accident he'd never gotten over. This time he wouldn't be too late. Not again. Suddenly, Rex let out a sharp, urgent bark. His body stiffened, and he started scratching the car's floor insistently. "What's up, boy?" Sarah asked, turning. Rex's eyes were locked on an old rusty sign pointing to the Sunset Motel. The road was narrow, flanked by twisted trees and fog that drifted like a ghostly veil. James slammed on the brakes and took the turn without hesitation. The place was half hidden in the overgrowth. Dim lights flickered at the reception, and a man smoked on the porch, unbothered by the rain. James got out, followed by Rex, who moved with steady, silent steps like a wolf on the hunt. Sarah headed straight for the clerk, while James scanned the area. Only 5 cars were parked. One of them, black, with a license plate partly covered in mud. Same description, same car. "Did this car show up tonight?" Sarah asked the clerk, a thin, nervous guy. "I don't remember, I don't pay much attention. People come and go," he stammered. James stepped closer, locking eyes with the man. "Where is he?" The clerk swallowed hard, his eyes darting to the end of the hallway. "Room 9, but don't drag me into this, please," Rex growled. He didn't need orders. He took the lead, guiding James and Sarah down the wet hallway with steady steps. Each closed door promised silence. But room 9 was different. From inside came the hum of a TV and something else, a faint whisper like muffled crying. James drew his gun. Sarah nodded. Rex positioned himself to the side, waiting for the signal. 1 second. 2. A kick to the door. Time exploded. The room was lit by a weak lamp. In a corner, sitting on an old blanket, was Emily, her doll clutched in her arms, her eyes swollen, her body rigid. When she saw James, she blinked, as if she couldn't believe it. But Michael Harris was gone. No sign of him. Just an open back door, a window with fresh mud on the sill. "He got away!" Sarah shouted. Rex bolted outside, following the scent. A trail had begun, and this time, the wolf wasn't letting go of his prey. The sound of footsteps on the mud broke the early morning quiet. Rex moved without hesitation through the wet underbrush, nose low, muscles taut, his paws leaving firm prints in the soft earth. James followed a few yards behind, flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. Every fiber of his being focused on the hunt. Sarah stayed with Emily in the room, making sure she was safe. The girl didn't speak, but her eyes never left Rex. When the dog tore out the back door, she barely whispered, "He'll find him." And she was right. The forest behind the motel was thick, tangled, full of roots that looked like hands clawing out of the ground. Fog slithered between the trees like a living specter. James knew he couldn't lose sight of Rex, but the dog glided through the shadows as if he belonged there. Then a snap, a broken branch, the echo of heavy breathing. Rex barked loudly, veering sharply. "Stay on it, boy, go!" James yelled, running after him. Minutes blurred. The cold stabbed at his lungs. The darkness thickened, but Rex kept going. Then, suddenly, he stopped dead in front of a small cabin half hidden by foliage. The windows were boarded up. A flickering light seeped through the door's cracks. James crouched beside Rex and listened. Voices. 2 men, arguing. "They found us, you idiot. I told you to leave the girl where we said. I wasn't leaving her there. Cameras were everywhere." James didn't need more proof. He touched Rex's head lightly. "Stay out here. If anyone tries to run..." Rex sat firm, eyes locked on the entrance. James moved to the door and shoved it open hard. The inside was a mess. Mattresses on the floor, wires, burned phones, bags of documents, photos of kids. Everything pointed to a secret operation. The 2 men froze. One, burly with a grey beard, raised a knife. The other, younger, tried to bolt for the back window. But they didn't count on Rex. The German shepherd launched himself with surgical precision, knocking the younger man to the ground with a fierce growl. The man screamed as he fell, his leg caught in Rex's jaws. James aimed at the other guy steadily. "Drop it, on the ground." The man hesitated and made the mistake of lunging. A gunshot echoed in the cabin. The body dropped lifeless onto the dirty wood floor. James was breathing hard. Rex held his target, not letting go until James signaled. "Good job, Rex, good job," James said, his throat tight as he cuffed the injured man. Sarah arrived minutes later with backup. Emily was in an ambulance getting care. She still wasn't talking, but had hugged Rex like he was the only safe thing in the world. And there, among scattered papers, they found the unthinkable. A list of names, ages, countries, routes, and a passport with Emily's photo under a different name. An international network, a hidden hell behind fake smiles. And Michael Harris wasn't just a captor, he was a recruiter. Morning came without fanfare. Low clouds blanketed the sky like a damp sheet, and the air smelled of wet earth and the ashes of fear. The scene at the cabin was still cordoned off by patrol cars, forensic teams, and the echo of what had happened hours before. But for James, Sarah, and Rex, this was just the first layer of a much deeper truth. Inside the Pine Valley police station, James stared with a furrowed brow at a table covered in papers, photos, forged records, and passports found in the cabin. Each name on that list was a stolen childhood, but one stopped him cold. "You seeing this, Sarah?" he said, his voice heavy, pointing to a file. Sarah leaned in, reading carefully. The name was Noah Carter, missing for 8 years. James couldn't help but close his eyes for a moment. It wasn't a coincidence, it was his nephew, his brother's son, taken under mysterious circumstances, a case never solved. He was on that list. "James," Sarah said softly, knowing that name tore him apart. "They never believed me when I said something was wrong," he whispered. "That it wasn't just a kid getting lost. This network, this damn network was already out there. Nobody wanted to see it." Rex, lying at James's feet, lifted his head as if he felt his owner's pain. He stepped closer and rested his nose on James's knee. James ran his hand over the dog's back, struggling to keep the anger burning up his throat in check. "Harris is tied to all of this," Sarah said. "He's not a pawn. He's a big piece, but he's not working alone. The guy we caught last night said something before they took him away." "What did he say?" "That the doctor threatened him if they screwed up. That Harris only answered to him." James frowned. "Doctor? That's what they called him. Nobody knows his real name, just that he's been pulling strings for years. There are records of similar operations in Vermont, Idaho, even Canada." A new shadow loomed over the case. And deep down, a more personal question grew in James. Was Noah alive? In another room, Emily was getting psychological care. She didn't talk much, but had started drawing, and among her drawings, one stood out. A tall man in a white coat, dark sunglasses, and behind him, kids in cages. Sarah looked at it, holding back tears. James clenched his fists. "We have to find him. If that man's real, he's running this whole nightmare." "And Harris is the key," Sarah said, pointing to the interrogation room. Just then, Rex stood up sharply. He looked down the hallway and growled low. It wasn't a warning bark. It was raw, almost primal. James followed the dog's gaze and saw him. Michael Harris, handcuffed, escorted by 2 officers heading to the interrogation room. He looked pristine, hair slicked back, not a scratch on his face, as if he didn't grasp the horror he'd caused. As he passed Rex, the dog let out a deep, long growl, almost feral. Harris glanced at him with a smug smile. "Nice dog," he murmured. James stepped up, inches from his face. "He smells what you are, and I swear, we won't stop until every secret you're hiding comes out." Harris smiled. "Then get ready to lose sleep," and he kept walking. But Rex didn't stop staring. Not with fear, with something older, like he recognized the darkness that came with that man. And then, James knew for sure this was just the beginning. The clock read 10:47 a.m. when the interrogation began. The room was lit by a single flickering fluorescent bulb, with that sterile metallic smell unique to places where truth is hunted. Michael Harris sat with his hands cuffed on the table. Across from him, James kept his cool, but his eyes were a storm ready to break. Sarah watched from behind the glass, Rex lying at her feet, alert but still. "You know what we found in that cabin?" James asked, keeping his voice low. Harris looked at him with a faint smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "You found what you were meant to find, nothing more. Girl after girl, file after file, lives stolen, traded, sold like products. And you pulling strings like it's all a game." Harris looked down, not out of guilt, but boredom. "You don't get it, Officer Carter. This isn't about evil, it's about structure, order. We provide a way out, for those with money, and for those with no future." James clenched his fists. His jaw trembled with barely contained rage. "And Noah," he snapped. "Where's my nephew?" For the first time, Harris blinked too much. He didn't answer, but the slight twitch of his upper lip betrayed a buried emotion. "You know him, don't you?" James pressed. "Tell me if he's alive." Harris leaned forward, still cuffed, with that cynical, hollow stare. "Maybe he is. Maybe he isn't. What matters is, you're too late, like always." That was enough. James stood abruptly and stormed out. Sarah caught him in the hallway, grabbing his arm. "Don't fall for his game. That's what he wants." Rex stood too, walking beside them with calm steps, as if his mere presence could steady his owner. "He's hiding something," James said, regaining control. "I saw it in his eyes. He knows something about Noah. And about this doctor," Sarah added. "We need more time, more pressure. Someone out there knows who that guy is, and we've got something else." Sarah pulled a folder from her bag, revealing freshly printed documents. A black and white photo, taken by a drone, showed a man leaving an abandoned clinic on the outskirts of Clearwater Bay. Tall, thin, in a medical coat, wearing dark sunglasses. It was the same man from Emily's drawing. This place was flagged years ago for suspicious activity, but got shut down before anyone could dig deeper, Sarah explained. "We've got a solid lead." James studied the photo for a moment. The feeling they were closing in on something monstrous gripped him. "Get everything ready. We're going tonight." Hours later, with night falling like a heavy curtain, the patrol car rolled down a back road. Rex was restless, standing, staring out the back window. He sniffed the air as if he could smell the past clinging to the trees. When they reached the site, everything looked dead. Boarded windows, overgrown weeds, rusted doors. But Rex jumped out and after a moment barked loudly. Not a warning, a call. Someone was inside, and James's heart, for reasons he couldn't name, started pounding harder. The moon barely pierced the twisted trees surrounding the old Clearwater Bay clinic. The brick building with its sagging roof loomed like an open wound in the forest. A steady wind whistled, as if the structure itself was breathing. James stepped out of the car slowly, followed closely by Sarah and Rex, who moved low, senses sharp, fur bristling. "This place gives me the creeps," Sarah muttered, adjusting her flashlight. "It's rotten," James replied, gun in hand, eyes fixed on the front entrance. The main door hung ajar on a rusted hinge. A sharp creak greeted them as they pushed it open. The stench of dampness, decay, and old chemicals hit them instantly. Rex growled faintly, almost inaudibly, but his paws didn't stop. He knew that smell. He'd caught it before at the cabin. The hallway was thick with dust and scattered papers, names of former patients, prescriptions, abandoned treatment reports. Everything looked like it had been left in a hurry. The walls bore handprints as if someone had tried to escape or beg for help. In one room, they found the unthinkable. A small gurney with leather straps, surrounded by cameras, makeshift surgical lights, and dangling wires. On a table sat folders with photos of kids. Empty faces, some smiling, others clearly drugged. At the bottom of one, Sarah recognized a face. "It's Noah," she gasped, gripping the photo tightly. "God, James, it's him!" James said nothing. The world blurred for a moment. His nephew, his blood, had been here, in this place, under those lights. "Rex," he whispered, "find him. Please find him." The dog lifted his head, sniffed hard, and turned toward the end of the hallway. He ran, silent, as if each step was a prayer. The officers followed, descending a creaking metal staircase. At the basement they found it, an underground corridor, numbered doors, electronic locks, total silence. Rex stopped at door number 4. He growled, then barked. Once, short, loud. James placed his hand on the knob. It was cold. Trembling, he turned it. The door opened. Inside was a sterile white room, no windows, a thin mattress on the floor, a ceiling lamp. And in a corner, sitting with long, matted blonde hair covering his face, a teenager, thin, too thin. When he looked up, James felt his world collapse. Those blue eyes, that lost expression, the shadow of a boy once full of life. "Noah," he whispered, voice breaking. The boy blinked, confused, as if his name was something he'd forgotten. Sarah stepped back, hand over her mouth, overwhelmed. Rex approached slowly. He sniffed the teen, then sat in front of him. No growl, no bark. He just stayed there, as if he knew this boy, if he was family. Noah reached out, touched Rex's back. A tear rolled down his cheek, and in that moment, something broke inside James. But just as relief began to settle, a sharp sound froze them. A metallic click from the end of the hallway. A door was closing, and footsteps started approaching. Steady footsteps, and in the darkness, a voice. "Did you think it was that easy?" The underground corridor seemed to shrink. Each approaching step echoed off the walls, as if the sound came from inside their bones. James stepped in front of Noah, instinctively shielding him, while Sarah aimed her gun into the dark. Rex moved forward a few steps, back arched, fangs bared. This time it wasn't caution. It was a threat. The voice came again, closer. "Leave the boy. He doesn't belong to you anymore." And then he appeared. A tall, lean man, dressed in a white coat that looked more ceremonial than medical. His hair was entirely gray, slicked back with surgical precision. He wore round, dark sunglasses that hid his eyes. His skin was pale, almost translucent. In his right hand, he held a metal cane topped with a snake's head. "You're too late, as always," he said with an icy smile. James gripped his gun tighter but didn't shoot. "Are you him? The doctor?" "Ah, that ridiculous name they gave me. I didn't choose it, but it has a certain flair. You destroyed lives, kids, families, years of suffering," Sarah shouted. The man tilted his head, emotionless. "I didn't destroy, I transformed. I gave new beginnings, some to very privileged places." "Enough games! This ends here!" James yelled. Tell me in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? Your opinion means a lot to me. Aiming at the doctor's chest, but he didn't flinch. He just raised a hand and snapped his fingers. Then footsteps echoed behind them. Many metallic clanks. Sarah spun around. A group of armed men descended the stairs, all in black, helmets, assault rifles, moving in sync. "We've got to get out," Sarah whispered, stepping back. James looked at Noah, still in shock, clinging to Rex with the strength of someone grasping the last rope before a fall. The dog, without a command, stood in front of them all, teeth bared, chest puffed. A living wall between the darkness and the innocent. "We're not letting them trap us," James said, firing the first shot. Chaos erupted. Lights flickered. The corridors filled with shouts, gunfire, and shadows. Sarah covered the rear. James shielded Noah, and Rex attacked with the fury of an ancient warrior. He leaped on one man, slamming him against the wall. Another tried to shoot him, but Rex moved fast, biting his arm hard, making the gun clatter to the floor. "Emergency exit," Sarah shouted. They ran through side corridors, guided by fading green evacuation signs. The doctor didn't follow. He just watched from a distance, as if he knew this was all part of a game he'd designed. Outside, the sun was just rising. The sky was a murky mix of purple and blue. The truck was still where they'd left it. They piled in fast. James took the wheel, Sarah in the back, and Rex jumped into the rear seat beside Noah. On the drive, no one spoke. Noah was just starting to breathe like someone learning to live again. At Pine Valley's hospital, a medical team was ready for Noah. As they took him away, Rex tried to follow, but stopped at the door. He just watched him go. Then Noah turned his head, showing a real expression for the first time. He smiled, just a little. James saw it and whispered, "You're back. I promise no one will touch you again." Hours later, in the sheriff's office, Sarah pored over reports. The operation was declared a federal matter. The doctor had vanished without a trace. His clinic was sealed off, but everyone knew he wasn't dead. He'd just faded, like a ghost with a human face. James looked at Rex, lying by his desk, exhausted. "We saved one, old friend. One more." And in that moment he knew. The horror wasn't over, but as long as they had Rex, they'd never be alone. 3 weeks had passed since the raid on the abandoned Clearwater Bay clinic. Pine Valley slowly returned to its usual routine, but nothing was the same. Beneath the calm, everyone knew something dark had touched them, leaving invisible scars. Noah Carter was still in the hospital under psychiatric and medical care. He hadn't fully regained his speech, but was responding to stimuli and recognizing voices, especially James's and Rex's. The German Shepherd, whenever he visited, lay by the bed, and Noah would rest his hand on his fur, like it was his safe haven. "It's like Rex knows exactly how he feels," a nurse said one afternoon, peeking through the door. James, standing outside, just nodded. Time had taught him some wounds don't heal with words, but with presence. And Rex somehow filled silences James didn't know how to break. Sarah got a promotion. Her work on the case caught the eye of the Interstate Crime Division, but she turned down the offer to relocate. She stayed in Pine Valley with the only team she truly trusted. "We've still got a lot to uncover," she told James, handing him a new folder of documents from international systems. Inside were names, dates, links to overseas financial groups, and on the first page a digitally generated sketch, the new face the doctor might be using. He'd vanished, yes, but not entirely. Justice hadn't reached everyone involved. The network was bigger, older, rooted in places light couldn't touch, but now with real evidence, living survivors, and a team ready to go all the way, there was hope. Emily was taken in by a family in a neighboring state. Before she left, she asked to see Rex one last time. He recognized her instantly, wagging his tail and approaching gently. She hugged him tight, her blue eyes filling with tears. "Thank you for coming for me," she whispered. Rex didn't respond. He just stood there, steady as ever, knowing his mission with that little soul was done. In the final scene, at a quiet sunset, James sat in his backyard, Noah on a wooden bench beside him. The teen was drawing now, shy, reserved, but present. Rex, lying under the oldest tree on the property, watched them with the calm of someone who knows evil had been pushed back, for now. James looked at the sky, took a deep breath, and said, "We didn't win everything, Rex, but we won today, and that, it's enough." The dog raised his ears and looked at him for a moment, then closed his eyes again, at peace. The world out there still had monsters, but now they knew there were shadow hunters too, and among them, a German shepherd named Rex. Thank you so much for sticking with this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton and motivates us to keep bringing new stories every week. And since you're here, take a moment to check out another one of our stories that's popping up on your screen. Big hug and see you next time. Stay well.